Good morning, Belfast.
Good morning, Belfast.
Good morning, Belfast.
Good morning, Belfast.
Good morning, Belfast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our new show about celebrating the good life in Belfast and Waldo County, Maine. Good Morning Belfast airs every Tuesday and Thursday from 8 to 9 a.m. It is broadcast on Belfast Community TV, Channel 2, and Belfast Community Radio, WBFY 100.9 FM. Good Morning Belfast informs, educates, and entertains you. So join us for an hour on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you can find us on the internet at goodmorningbelfast.com. Hello, everybody. This is George Frangoulis. I'm the host of this new show called Good Morning Belfast, and we're delighted to be with you today. This is Kristen Frangoulis, my spouse, who will be co-hosting with me today. She has a unique segment called Arts by the Bay. Today she'll be talking about poetry in Belfast and some of the Belfast poets. Now, Good Morning Belfast is a concept for a program that Ned Leitner, who runs the Belfast Community Television station, and I came up with to celebrate Belfast and Waldo County. The show is going to be broadcast on Belfast Community Television, cable, Channel 2, also Belfast Community Radio, WBFY 100.9 FM. And thirdly, it will be broadcast over Rockland, to Rockland and Camden viewers over Midcoast TV. The show is airing Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 9 in the morning, and we will feature wonderful guests and have special segments on arts, the arts in Belfast and Waldo County, business and community affairs. The show will include segments on notable Belfastians, fun and fascinating facts of Waldo County, and look who's coming to town, along with timely and thought-provoking items to inform and hopefully to entertain you folks who are listening and watching our show. Now, back in the 1800s, there was a fascinating chap by the name of Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. He was born in 1802 and passed away in 1866. He was a spiritual teacher, a magnetizer, a mesmerist, and inventor. And what made him notable and famous, I suppose, is that he inspired Mary Baker Eddy, who was the founder of the Christian Science Church. An interesting sidelight about Phineas Parkhurst Quimby is his name appears in Vladimir Nabokov's novel Lolita. Another notable Belfastian is a woman, Ginny Francis. She was born in Belfast in May of 1962 and is best known as being an actress for her character on the ABC soap opera General Hospital. She also appeared on numerous soap operas and other TV shows, and most recently she owned a store called The Cherished Home, which was located on Sears Port Avenue in Belfast. However, this was sold in 2012 and has closed since then. Our final notable Belfastian is a man named Wendell Woodbury. He graduated from Crosby School, and he was born in 1942. He passed away in 2010. He was a TV journalist and news anchor. He spent most of his career at WGAL-TV in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and he was the first news reporter to report on the 3 Mile Island accident. Kristen, do you have any information about who's coming to town and some events?
Well, since I'm the poetry lady, have a show on the radio called Poetry by the Bay. There is a poetry event that's coming to town on March 17th, and it will be at Mary Weaver's Playhouse. And it's an open mic for people who want to read, and also open audience. Donations are accepted to support the Playhouse. And the theme is cars or travel, trains or planes, buses. And I guess it's the springtime when people are moving around again. Another event that's happening on Saturday, March 17th at 3 o'clock, right here in this wonderful old professor's bookshop gathering place. And it is a talk on the romantic painter Turner. And it will be at 3 o'clock. He's one of my favorites. When we went to England, the only thing I wanted to do was to go to the Tate Gallery and see him. So please come to that. Okay.
So do you have a poem to read for us today, Kristen? One of your own by any chance?
Actually, this one is, and I'm reading it just because it's a Belfast poem. And other poems that I've selected to read today also have that kind of a tone. It's called Home to Belfast. As young lovers, they ran away to Belfast. His beard was black. Her hair was yellow. They lived upstairs in a tall gray house with a tower. She left a broken heart, he a broken promise. They pretended to be adults. She taught English and danced with words. He edited stories, arranged words on pages, and printed them on paper. Belfast, then, was a grand old dame on lean times, with twisted stockings, feathers and iridescent chicken guts afloat in her bay. Yet, with an air of elegance, of memories of past glory, of Greek revival houses on the hill with widows' walks, of masts and sails out on the sea, he of the black beard, and she with the yellow hair, believed in her magic. They moved to the country, freedom, and raised tomatoes, married in an old white church with lilac bouquets, had 2 babies, then moved to Dixie. After 30 years, still lovers, they came home to the town on the bay. His beard is gray, her hair is white. All has changed but remains the same. The grand old dame, her head held high again, her pride aglow in Renaissance.
Thanks, Chris. That was wonderful. I enjoyed hearing that again.
Celebrating Belfast.
It's alright, little darling. It's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright. Smiles returning to the faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I see it's alright. Sun, 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 here we come. Sun, 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 here we come. years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun. It's alright. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun. It's alright. It's alright.
Well, that was great listening to George Harrison, Here Comes the Sun. And I know we're all waiting for the sun to come out, for the sun to shine warmly, warm enough so we can get out into the garden. Spring is officially just around the corner, and when we can start planting our seedlings, we'll be delighted to get out there and dig in the dirt. Speaking of digging in the dirt, you may remember the fact that there was a publication published here in the Belfast area called Farmstead Magazine. My wife Kristen and I were responsible for operating that magazine, and it ran for 15 years. In 1988, we sold the magazine business and moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, with 2 little kids. I took the position of professor of journalism at the University of Alabama, and we spent the last 28 years in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the heart of Dixie. We sold our house in Tuscaloosa, and we've moved back to the area. We live in Searsmont now. And while we were here, Kristen also worked at the Belfast area high school, didn't you, Kristen?
I taught English and theater, and I was first hired to teach all the bad boys. They were called Chris's Cowboys throughout the system. And I also taught at Mount View High School, and I did the theater both places. And then when we moved to Alabama, I taught in an arts and humanities gifted program for elementary school kids, and did theater and Shakespeare and art. And then founded an outreach children's theater there. It's called the Peanut Butter and Jelly Players, which lasted until we moved, and taught at the university.
And we're back here in the Belfast area, back home, I think we'd like to say. We enjoy the community, the arts, and speaking of the arts, Kristen, you have a segment called Arts by the Bay. That's going to be part of Good Morning Belfast, and every time we have this segment on the show, you're going to talk about things like poetry, painting, theater, and other arts.
Absolutely. Should I go ahead and talk about Arts by the Bay?
I think so.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Well, my background is in the arts. I also directed an art gallery in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I'm a painter, I'm a poet, I'm a theater person. And so that's my area of passion and love and a little bit of expertise. And it kind of began when we volunteered to work for the new Belfast radio station. And they were looking for programming. So I said, oh, well, I'll do a show on poetry because I'm a published poet, love poetry. And I thought, well, it's probably kind of obscure. Was I ever wrong? There's poets in Waldo County like black flies. They're everywhere. And really good poets. I've already interviewed over 25 local poets on my show. So this is an extension of that, and I've expanded it to Arts by the Bay, so I will be covering these other arts as well. There's painters who haven't organized as well as the poets in Belfast. April is Poetry Month. There's going to be another Belfast Poetry Festival. There's lots of theater going on, music going on. This is a wonderful music town. Belfast has really become an arts community and a lot of indie art. And I think that's absolutely fabulous. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about poetry. There are several writers' groups in town, several in the little town of Belfast, and I happen to belong to one of the writers' groups, and the mentor or leader of that particular writers' group is Tom Moore, who is also the poet laureate, and I'm going to get him on the show sometime wearing the golden cape of the poet laureate, probably kicking and screaming, but it's going to happen. And I'd like to share some of the poems, a few poems from that particular writing group. The first one is a tiny little poem, and it's by a man named Eric Anderson, and he and his wife Cynthia are both in this writing group, and they're really wonderful point-counterpoint. And he is a very spare writer. And this first poem is about being in a writing group, and it's called Building. Each of us comes of a Tuesday, each scarred in his own way, seeking her own voice. Rooted in memory, grounded in hope, we thread through the personal, work with word and craft, relinquish certainty to build a clearer vision. Eric Anderson, big, tall Swede. And on the light side, our poet laureate, this is not the poem he gave me to read today, but it's a fun poem, and I'm kind of choosing poems that have to do with Waldo County. And this is a humorous poem, and it's called On a December Sunday. Mid-afternoon in Warren, Maine, we meet a pig headed north. Resolute, quite undeterred by the cars, mid-sized, light-colored, he trots on the side, obeying pedestrian laws. We don't stop, but wonder where a pig might be headed on a Sunday afternoon. Courting? Domestic dispute? Searching for tastier mash? The pigs that I know just laze around or snuffle through slops in the trough. But this is a Wilbur, a strong-minded oinker, out for more than a stroll. Oregon farmer eaten by pigs, remember the headlines a few years ago? Only his dentures were found. Maybe this pig's on the lam. After a masterful meal, later we passed by the spot where we'd met, but this pig is AWOL. He's flown. So, a nice little fun Maine poem by our poet laureate, Tom Moore. And we'll do a winter poem. Judy Caber was very involved in the poetry scene here. And forgive this season that we're in right now. Forgive this season which leans against windows, brow furrowed white, willing itself in, bringer of wanton boots of war, of thick washes of gray, mayhem its middle name, it cannot help the flame, now blown from the lamp, deadened current now wrapped among fallen trees hidden under waste of snow. Strips of light elude your fingers as you sit in the waiting room for the howl's kiss, for the lover's lost embrace, for the worn worm gear to make its turn. So age plus winter. I guess we all face all of those things. Cynthia Anderson, wife of Eric Anderson. This is called Making Pie. I played Women's Town League softball for over 30 years. Our 2 daughters grew up in the dugout until they were old enough to join me on the team as teammates. I can't imagine throwing across the diamond to my mother playing first base. My mother didn't play sports, unless you count candlepin bowling, which she sometimes did at the neighborhood club at the bottom of the street. My mother was really good at making pies. For a 2-crusted pie, she used 1 stick of butter and 1.5 cups of flour. My favorite was apple. I never had apple pie better than hers. My mother and I had an agreement. If I peel the apples, she'd make the crust. We made a lot of pies this way over the years. We were a pie-making team. When I moved away from home and made my own pies, they tasted just like my mother's. Now my older daughter makes pies just as well or better. So 3 generations of pie making.
Well, that was great, Chris. Now, that poem you read about the pig reminded me of the pigs we used to raise and the pigs that Harry Irving raised for us and then never came to fruition. That's another story.
That's another poem, actually.
That's another poem for
I've written that poem.
For another day. Well, thank you very much for your inaugural segment, Arts by the Bay. We'll have more of that sometime in the future, I hope. And what we're going to do now is listen to the Leaky Boot Jug Band as they perform a wonderful tune called Belfast, Maine.
Along the Midcoast lies this harbor where the Passy meets the sea, where the bay calls to the sailors and the summer air is sweet. Took its name from Northern Ireland when settled long ago. They built multi-masted schooners and captains built their homes. Belfast, Maine, pretty little city by the water. If you haven't been, you ought to come, but you might just want to stay. Belfast, Maine, take a little walk on down by the water. Boathouse out to City Point, point you on your way. She's been rough around the edges, working fingers to the bone. In the sardine and the chicken plants, hardened people called this home. Then 40 years ago, some people came to get back to the land. The locals shook their heads, then shook their hands. Belfast, Maine, a pretty little city by the water. If you haven't been, you ought to come, but you might just want to stay. Belfast, Maine, take a little walk on down by the water. Boathouse out to City Point will point you on your way. Well, they worked on things together, bringing changes to this town, with a nod to where we've been and an eye toward where we're bound. Now we've got art walks, farmers markets, and we've got music in the streets. We've got boat yards, we've got Elvis, we throw a party New Year's Eve. Belfast, Maine, pretty little city by the water. If you haven't been, you ought to come, but you might just want to stay. Belfast, Maine, take a little walk on down by the water. Boathouse out to City Point will point you on your way. From the boathouse out to City Point will point you on your way.
Hello, everybody. This is George Frangoulis. We're back again from that little break, and we have our guest with us today, a fabulous person who is not exactly new to Belfast, but he's new in this position as Executive Director for the Belfast Area Chamber of Commerce. And I have with me this morning Steve Ryan. Welcome, Steve. Glad to have you aboard.
Thank you for having me here, George. I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited too. Did you walk here?
I did. I have a very small commute and world right now. I live one block in one direction and work one block in the other direction.
So we're halfway between your home and your office.
You're right in the midpoint.
All right. Well, that's great. Great to have you. Tell us about your position as the Executive Director of the Area Chamber of Commerce. I know a little bit about chambers. Chambers of Commerce. I belong to the West Alabama Chamber of Commerce in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Okay.
And we tried to do a lot of great things for the community. What are some of the things you're doing?
Well, the Chamber has been very successful in promoting Belfast and promoting a large number of our businesses, both locally and regionally. We host the Information Center at the foot of the hill here, right at the harbor, and that gets upwards of 10,000 people walking in, looking for information about what to do, where to go, where to eat, where to stay, even relocation information for people who fall in love with Belfast and want to move here. So the Information Center is a great place for visitors and for people who are interested in learning more about Belfast, as is our website. And we maintain a pretty robust website of information with topics about Belfast, but also details about the Chamber of Commerce membership, all of the businesses and organizations that are members of the Chamber, including the city of Belfast.
How many members?
We have about 400 members now. So we continue to grow. I was just talking to a past executive director from about 10 years ago when there was about 250 members. So I think that we're continuing a nice inclusive growth pattern. We have a lot of diversity in our members. We have large corporations, the Waldo County General Hospital, we have Athena Health, Bank of America, all of the big ones that we very much want to engage, very much want to see how they can work with the chamber to build a business and an economic community. But then we have very large portion of our membership being small businesses, and I mean small, 3 or fewer employees. It's probably about 90% are 3 and fewer employees, whether it's for-profit businesses, retail, whatever, or nonprofits.
I see, yep.
Yeah.
So, do you have associate memberships for non-business folks too?
We have a friends category for individuals who like to be supportive of the chamber and active in the chamber. But what comes to mind when you say that concept is that we are working with business groups and kind of promotional and informational organizations around Waldo County and bringing them in as members under a very affordable fee schedule to make them partners with us. So the Lincolnville Business Group is a very robust, I think 70 or 80 business member organization that's trying to promote and organize and serve the Lincolnville area. Over in Searsport, there's a Head of the Bay Business Alliance, HOBA, and they have brought business people from Searsport and Stockton Springs and a few other towns together to, again, try and be like a little mini chamber, an informal gathering, a way that businesses can network and support each other and build the community. And Belfast area Chamber of Commerce wants to support those things. We're also getting pretty active in unity and trying to establish some mutually beneficial relationships with businesses and similar organizations in unity. And I'm going to start visiting Liberty. So we're really trying to have a membership that really makes Waldo County stronger through a lot of different avenues.
Well, that's great. You have about 400 members right now.
Right.
You're hoping to grow that, I know. There's some big news that's just been breaking here in Belfast. Can we go there? Talk about the Nordic Aquaculture Farm. Understand that you're very active in seeing how that fulfills its promise to the area.
I've tried to be active in that and to stay informed, just like a lot of people around the town. Last week there was a tremendous turnout at an informational center session at the Hutchison Center. And I heard someone there estimated as 500 people filling their large room. 2 hours of very intelligent, very concerned and involved, but very civil questioning of the organization Nordic Aqua Farm, and also city officials and the water district representatives, and people who really could start to answer some of the public's concerns. And it was just a moment, a session of pride about Belfast, because Belfast handled itself very well. The people of Belfast turned out. They were involved and concerned. They were thoughtful. Some were very technically astute. And so it was just a matter of very impressive showing by Belfast and its citizens, but also by Nordic Aqua Farms. They answered questions very candidly. They told us all about their business, their technology, their development plans, their schedule, and what they didn't know. And I think that was, refreshing honesty, I guess.
Right.
We don't know that yet, but here's where it will fall in the developmental process as we have to look at this issue, look at that issue.
Do you see this as being a boom, potential job opportunities for Belfast folks, especially some of the younger folks, preventing them from moving away to find jobs, but to stay here?
I think clearly. First of all, they're going to employ a sizable number of people. I think they're talking about starting with 60 to 80 people during 2020, and then it would grow up into the middle 100 range just for their foreseeable employment in the near future. Beyond that, of course, it'll create jobs in the way that the state likes to talk about economic clusters. So the Front Street Shipyard has started to create additional opportunity, related businesses, people who serve them. Maybe it's a machine shop, maybe it's carpenters, whatever. And all of these services and supports for the Nordic aqua farms will be needed.
Right.
And then I'm especially interested in your last thought there, because during the questioning last week, a person asked if the new ocean school that's opening up in Searsport might have the opportunity to have students learn at this facility. And the CEO, Eric Heim, said absolutely, they do that at their other facilities. And you can imagine then a school dedicated to ocean sciences having such a progressive, technologically advanced facility right in our backyard and creating jobs for graduates and a career path. I think there's a great saying going around now, if you can see it, you can be it. So to see this in action can give a high schooler an idea about exactly where they'd like to head, what types of things they could do with their knowledge and their learning. And I think that's fabulous for our community.
Absolutely. Now, this is an area that I know you're not directly involved with, and that is the housing in Belfast, but this could be the other side of the coin, perhaps, having enough affordable housing for folks who come because of this new opportunity for jobs.
Right. I think this definitely brings the issue to the fore. It's an issue now.
Yes.
I'm a little bit involved with it because I do sit on the planning board for the city of Belfast. And we have been trying to come up with innovative ways to loosen some of the ordinances, create new avenues for developers, create opportunities for individual homeowners to have more units in some of the big, grand old houses that we have. So housing has been on the table as an issue, but this will push the issue to another level. This will make us think big. And perhaps with some of the tax revenues that this will bring, the city can play a constructive and facilitating role to have private development really start to take off in Belfast.
Well, that's great. It sounds like we're about 2 years away from this being a functioning business here in Belfast. I know that there's a lot of construction that has to go on. We're going to take a break in just a minute or two, but when we come back, I'd like to come back to downtown Belfast and the more immediate events of what's happening, what kinds of businesses are coming into town. If you could share some of those with us and give us some stories about some of the successes you've had at the Chamber of Commerce. So with that, we're going to take a break again, and when we come back, Steve is going to tell us more about the Chamber of Commerce and what they're doing to help our businesses here in downtown Belfast. Okay, Steve?
Very good, George. Thanks.
Well, it's all right, riding around in the breeze. Well, it's all right, if you live the life you please. Well, it's all right, doing the best you can. Well, it's all right, as long as you lend a hand. You can sit around and wait for the phone to ring, waiting for someone to tell you everything. Sit around and wonder what tomorrow will bring. Maybe a diamond ring. Well, it's alright, even if they say you're wrong. Well, it's alright, sometimes you gotta be strong. Well, it's alright, as long as you got someone to lay. Well, it's alright, every day is Judgment Day. Maybe somewhere down the road away, at the end of the line, you'll think of me and wonder where I am these days. At the end of the line, maybe somewhere down the road when somebody plays. At the end of the line, that. And it don't matter if you're by my side. I'm satisfied. Well, it's alright. Even if you're old and gray, well, it's alright. You still got something to say. Well, it's alright. Remember to live and let live. Well, it's alright. The best you can do is forgive. Well, it's alright. Riding around on the breeze. Well, it's alright. If you live the life you please. Well, it's alright. Even if the sun don't shine. Well, it's alright. We're going to the end of the line.
Hello, everybody. This is George Frangoulis again. We're back from that break, and we're still with Steve Ryan, who's the Executive Director of the Area Chamber of Commerce. He told us the last segment about his thoughts of the Nordic aquaculture farm and all the potential that's bringing to the area. And he's promised now to talk a little bit about what's happening closer to home, right downtown here, in the immediate present. So, Steve, thanks for sticking with us. I'm glad you didn't leave during the break.
Good.
I know you probably got a very busy agenda today, don't you?
Today is a somewhat busy day, but each day at the Chamber is filled with things that I actually enjoy quite a bit. I get to meet a lot of people. I get to talk to them about their businesses, their organizations, their nonprofit activities. Last week we had a business after hours at the First Church here in Belfast, right downtown, that's celebrating its 200th anniversary of that building this year. And that's so much fun and so interesting to talk about and get a tour of the church, etc. So that's a pretty good job to just be able to talk to people and make things happen and collaborate on big events like the Winter Whoopla that happened. I mean, these things are just a lot of fun to do. I had done it in my role with different nonprofits in the area, and when this chamber job became open in the, I guess, in the fall, I was lucky enough to be selected.
Well, that's great. Glad that you were. I know you'll be a real asset. You'll be a real asset. Your leadership will be just terrific. So what's happening downtown today?
Well, to start with the chamber and our chamber office, I have a couple of things that are just starting to evolve in my early months here on the job. One is that we are beginning a strategic planning process with our board of directors. We have a board that's 12 members of various businesses throughout Waldo County, from Searsport to Northport and certainly around Belfast. And they are working with me to step back, work with a facilitator, and ask some of the basic questions about what is the chamber, what should we be doing, and how can we accomplish the goals set before us. That, to me, is so helpful as the new guy, because it will clarify what I should be doing, what our value is to our businesses and our members. And when I continue to get out and about, I'll be able to say with great certainty, this is who we want to be, this is how we want to help. And I very much want the chamber to be helping, especially our small businesses. I think whatever we can do to bring resources, bring opportunities, bring promotion to the small businesses, that's what I want to do.
Now, I wanted to mention for the folks looking in and listening that the job fair, you're sponsoring a job fair coming up on March 20th. That's going to be in the Hutchinson Center.
That's right.
Is this the first one?
This is the second. I'm sure that there were other job fairs. In fact, our chamber held a smaller job fair early in 2017 at the Boathouse. But this is the second of a big collaborative job fair that the city is really behind and supporting. The Hutchison Center is hosting and throwing a lot of resources into the holding and the success of it. And the Chamber, Our Town Belfast, the Belfast Creative Coalition, our local coaching organization called Workforce Solutions, and the Maine Department of Labor. Lots of partners are coming together to make this event a success. Last year, there were 50 employers and about 400 job seekers came. Many of them got jobs right there at the event. And we expect it to be as successful as before. So it's very exciting. I think it's a big opportunity for Belfast.
Yes, I think so too. You must have to do a lot of communicating with your membership and the larger community. I'd like to know a little bit more about your methods for communication, social media, magazines, things like that. What can you share with us about that?
Well, a real staple of communicating in my job is to get out and talk to people like this conversation, talk to our chamber members, talk to people and organizations that are not members of the chamber, and really talk about Belfast, talk about what we're trying to do, talk about what I've learned in terms of resources and programs that can help and what's out there. So face-to-face, I find to be one of the most effective, especially in a community like Belfast. I think that there's tons of social media use and connectivity, but people really connect with and respond to a face-to-face conversation. I certainly value the other media as well. Our magazine is coming out probably next week, the 2018 Belfast, the Bay and Beyond. And this magazine, produced with the help from Pica Design, has gotten actual statewide awards in the past as a high-quality magazine that not only profiles a number of our chamber members, and it lists our entire membership so that people can see what lodging and restaurants and other services are available. But it also has kind of interesting and maybe a little bit different articles about Belfast, certain aspects like how people dress in Belfast and where some of the best adult beverages are, and how Belfast has a certain personality and a certain character. We'll be trying to capture that in this upcoming magazine. So that's kind of fun. And then you mentioned social media. We're very active on Facebook. We send out email newsletters now about 5 or 6 times a month with different focus. Some of it is very useful, news you can use, nice and short and to the point. And others are really trying to capture all the events and business activities and nonprofit activities that are going on in Belfast. So there's a couple of different ways that we use both email and Facebook to put the information out there, keep people informed.
Well, I've been to your website, and it's a very nicely constructed website.
Good.
And very informative. How many folks do you have working for you downtown?
As myself and our office manager, Kathleen Coleman,
Yes.
who has been with us 5 years. So she is my rock. She's the go-to person who has the history and the knowledge of how to get things done. And it is just Kathleen and I.
Well, I'll tell you what, Kathleen's a whale of a person to work with. I have corresponded with her a few times, and she really is very helpful and very knowledgeable, I must say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Helps me. I mean, I'm brand new. I'm walking in. I have to know who's who and what's where and where they keep the pencils. And so it's great to have somebody who has that experience, and she's calm. She can get stuff done.
Well, I'll tell you about Kathleen. When she got the word that Good Morning Belfast was coming to town, she was the first one to send me an email and said, there are 2 things you need to do. One, you need to announce coming events that the chamber is, and maybe this was out of order, and you also have to have our director, Steve Ryan, as a guest. So you are our first guest, and Kathleen is responsible for having you here this morning.
Okay, I'll get her back.
Okay, that sounds great. Let me ask you this, and I do want to go off on a high note, but before that, and the high note is we want to know more about your personal life, just a little bit of background. But Steve, what are some of the obstacles facing a business that wants to come to Belfast in the area? What do they need to know, and what are the challenges, I suppose?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that Belfast is a very positive and welcoming place for a business that wants to come. I think it's very affordable as a location. I think that it is a welcoming community, that the people here want to see positive growth, sustainable growth, something that's sound and constructive for our community. So I think that they will welcome organizations and businesses that really do contribute. The city as a operation is welcoming and facilitatory, whether it's the Code and Planning Department or the Economic Development Director, Thomas Kittredge, or the city manager, Joe Slocum. They're all positive about welcoming business, but also protecting our community and doing it in a smart way. So I think there's a lot of positives. There are some of the stressors that we mentioned before. Having enough workers is an issue because there is very low unemployment, and the Belfast area, I think, is lower than the state average. So it's a little bit hard to identify a larger number of workers or to get that right person quickly for your business. And the job fair and other things the Chamber is doing is trying to address that. But otherwise, I would say, we have land, we have buildings, we have a positive city government, and I think it's a pretty good place for business to consider.
Well, on that note, let me just delve into one area that we haven't touched on very much at all. You don't have a very thick Maine accent. You're not from Maine originally, are you?
No, I'm not. No, my dark past is that I'm actually an escapee from New York City.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
You're from New York City.
I left New York City back in '77 and never looked back. I did not care for it. I can't complain about growing up there. It taught me a lot of survival skills, but it's just not the lifestyle that I was looking for. And I've now reached the end of my northward migration. I went from New York to Boston, to northern Massachusetts, to southern New Hampshire, to southern Maine, and now I've arrived.
Well, good for you. When did you arrive?
I've been in Belfast for about 12 years.
Oh, is that right? 12 years, yeah. Well, we lived here back in the 70s and 80s and moved away for a while, and we're back now. So we couldn't stay away. Where'd you go to school?
How many schools do we want to count?
Did you go to college?
I went to college. I went to a Jesuit high school, which of course has its effects on a person. I went to a public college. I went to graduate school in the University of Hawaii, and later graduate school at Simmons College, which is an all-women's college. Yeah. So got a lot of eyebrows raised. And
you have an MS, a Master of Science degree.
MS and a Master's in Healthcare Administration.
In Healthcare Administration.
From Simmons.
And one of your big jobs was working for a healthcare enterprise.
I had a 35-year career in healthcare and just made, with this chamber job, a very big career change, and love it.
Well, spring is almost here. We're all looking forward to the sun coming back, big time, for summer to be here, for all those tourists to arrive in town.
It's going to be exciting.
It's going to be exciting. Is it going to be exciting for you? Do you stay around? Or do you go away for vacation? Do you go to Hawaii?
No, I wouldn't go back to Hawaii just because I'm not a beach person. I don't sit very well. I need to be doing something. I need to get up. I need to have some fun. So.
What do you do for fun? You have a sailboat?
No. nothing too high end or constructive. I mean, I actually have a lot of fun, just being around Belfast.
Sure.
Whether it's shopping or going out and getting something to eat,
and all the arts
doing
events
things with my family.
Yeah.
And then I've owned a big old house for the last 12 years. And that is always a lot of fun, repairing things
Absolutely.
and working in the yard and keeping busy.
Okay.
But now I'm an apartment dweller, so I'm going to have to make it up as I go.
Okay. I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Will you come back and visit with us again sometime?
I'd love to, George.
All right. We'd
That's
love to
fun.
have you. Thank you
All
very
right.
much. This was Steve Ryan. This is Steve Ryan.
Still is.
He's going to leave here in a minute, and he's going to walk back down to his office at the bottom of Main Street. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Thank you, George.
See you next time. Okay. Well, we had a nice conversation, didn't we, with Steve Ryan? And I want to thank him, and I want to thank George Cisco, who owns the Old Professor Bookshop, for letting us camp out here in his second floor salon. This is right above the bookshop. I also want to thank Ned Leitner, who is our technology guy. He's the director. He's behind the camera. You can't see him, but I can see Mr. Leitner. He's giving me the signal that it's about time to wrap this up. The next time, when you come back and see us again and listen to us again, we're going to have the new executive director from our town, Belfast, Mr. Zachary
Schmesser.
Schmesser. Zachary Schmesser. Schmesser. Thank you so much. See you here next time. This is George Frangula saying so long. Want to be our guest on the air? Then find us on the internet and contact the host. Go to www.goodmorningbelfast.com. And thank you for tuning in to Good Morning Belfast. Producer and host, George Frangoulis. Arts by the Bay host, Kristen Frangoulis. Videographer and director, Ned Leitner. And special thanks to Eric Clausmeyer and George Cisco. Copyright 2018, Good Morning Productions.